there's an equilibrium between the fragility and the sturdiness of the human body. And due to the complex nature of how our human or how our skeletal body works and how the muscles bind to those insertion points, we need to acknowledge and understand that these particular gym movements, like the squat, things that are putting a load on top of your back, specifically your spine, right? These are they're essential things that we must consider before doing these exercises. And now, although we may agree that the spine it's not really that fragile, although it's flexible due to the muscles that allow for its rotation. So I guess the deep stabilizers of the posterior trunk. I mean, these consist of like the rotators, your multifidus, and the deep kind of muscles that ensure that the spinous process is all kept in place, right? Now, although it's pretty strong, right, we are kind of innately born for the lumbar region to be able to bear load. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should just go in without any warm-ups or going in with a heavy weight without prior training, right? That's obviously going to lead to injuries, and it's so evident in the number of injuries and things that we can prevent, right? Now, going into this, we can kind of think of an analogy of how our body works. Our bones, they're extremely tough, they're very strong, but the muscles, we need to see these muscles not as just objects and things that just grow bigger through protein and breaking down the muscle fibers, but sort of these ropes that bind those bones together, keeping everything in place. And it's merely through the pulling, the contraction of the muscle, so the pulling of the rope, that allows for your body to move, right? Now, if we go a bit deeper, this is due to like the ions like calcium and so on that allow for your action potential to occur. We won't go too deep into that, but we need to know that specifically the trunk, so the torso, is in this squat movement. When we're loading our spine with weight, we need to balance the extension and the flexion of the spine. Now, the muscles that are all involved in this consist of the muscles in the posterior trunk, as well as the the superficial and the deep anterior abdominal wall. Right. Now, I started off this warm up with some ab works, right? So before going into this workout, I was feeling a bit of discomfort in my lower spine. And through the warm-up with my abs, I was able to kind of engage and understand, acknowledge how important my abs are. Because after doing a bit of abs, it helped a lot and I felt a lot better. Felt a lot more sturdy when I was bracing and when I had that load on my back. Now, with the muscles of the anterior abdominal wall, you've got your rectus abdominis, which is kind of like the abs, right? The most, the things that you're able to see, right? Like what we define universally as that nice, authentic ab look, right? The external obliques are more to the side. They're more superficial, so closer to the surface than the internal obliques. And these kind of help with stabilizing that trunk, so preventing it from rotating left and right? Now, all the way in the deepest point is your transversus abdominis, right? And all of these muscles work as a four-ped muscle type. They're mainly the prime movers of flexion of the vertebral column, right? And when we refer to flexion, we're referring to our body going forward, right? Now, obviously, if we just focus on contracting these abs, well, you're not really going to get that complete compound squat movement. So what we need to do is, we also need to engage the posterior trunk. And now with a lot of people, by naturally squatting, our body kind of agrees and understands that, well, we need this balance between the posterior trunk and your abs, right? Now, once we start loading weight, that's when we need to be extremely precise, because we are no longer in this localized environment where no weight is bared on us and we're just bearing our own body weight. Now we're actually putting heavy loads, probably more than your own body weight. So now we need to thoroughly understand the neurological connection between the abs, your back, and how can we flex and contract these two muscle groups in order to keep that spine from, breaking down and keeping it from a vulnerable position. So going into the posterior trunk, the overall posterior trunk, you got your trapezius, your latissimus dorsi. These are your upper back region, and I guess this is where your aesthetic position of your back looks, right? When you're flexing. Now, a bit deeper in here, the muscles that are a lot more prominent in the squat are the erector spinal and your quadratus lumborum. Now, the erectors are composed of 3 different types of muscles. These guys are kind of closer to your spine, right? And they're kind of like these long ropes that attach from your skull all the way down to your pelvis. And these consist of your spinalis, your longissimus, and your ilicostalis. These guys, they all work together. They're not just individual muscles that do a particular process. They all work as a team, as a synergist, and ensures that your whole spine is kind of kept in a nice neutral back, especially in the squat. Now, the prime mover of extending your trunk, so pulling your back to backwards, is the quadratus lumborum. Now, these guys are the direct opposite compartment, so of the abdominal muscles, right? These guys have the exact opposite roles compared to the abs. They are their antagonist. So, especially during my squat session, I purposely was looking out for trying to flex my back and my abs and ensuring that I was keeping that really strong neutral state while bracing myself. And yeah, I guess in the warm-up, when I was increasing the blood flow to my muscles, essentially what it does is it dilates your blood vessels and allows for greater oxygen intake into your muscles. So greater in performance while you're loading weight. Now that right there was my 100 for 2x2. Here was a weight that I was somewhat uncomfortable with. So I wouldn't say it's a weight that was too heavy, but obviously something that I was outside of my comfort zone. I haven't hit 110 in a while. My 1 rep max is 120. And I somewhat surprised myself being able to do this for somewhat of a squat pause after all my working sets. So after doing all my squats, I was thinking, well, I didn't feel like I was engaging my the actual muscles of my posterior and anterior trunk. So considering this, I was like, well, might as well start doing some Romanian deadlifts just to ensure that I'm truly engaging with all those muscles. And I was considering doing this as a warm-up, but then again I was thinking, what if this overexerts myself and hinders my performance in the squat? So yeah, that's why I was just doing this later on. You can kind of see that with my hamstrings as well. They're totally engaged while doing these RDLs. And after doing these sets, I started feeling a really strong strain in the hamstrings, and I was pretty surprised because I personally thought that the squats was able to warm me up pretty hard. Now, the main things that were going inside my head here was, why is my grip so weak? Because it was coming down to my fingertips, but aside from that, it was how much I was engaging my lats, right? you kind of see the definition at the very top when I was kind of dragging it down. And this was what was kind of keeping my thoracic and like my cervical region in like that overall neutral state alongside my lumbar spine. So I guess having better understood the neurological connection between my brain and my lats, it certainly has improved in my ability to understand this movement. And simply just saying understanding the movement doesn't mean just doing the movement and going, oh, I can feel it in the muscles. It's more like a journey of, maximizing the efficiency of that movement. Of course, I'm pretty far away from this. I've got very little experience in these kind of movements. So it's more so something that I want to be a bit more concerned about. Now over here, I was just finishing off my workout with my ab workout, and I was trying to keep my abs engaged the whole time, like contracted the whole movement. And this was somewhat, my intentions were to emulate the bracing of a squat. So in a squat, while you're bracing, you want to keep your abs engaged the whole entire time. So that's why I was like, oh, then why don't I try and do some pull-ups or movements that are compounded while keeping the abs engaged the whole time. And by doing this, I was able to address my concerns on being able to keep the abs contracted the whole time while going through the up and down motion of the squat. And yeah, after doing that, I guess it was like a new concept that brought about something I needed to concern myself a bit more with. But yeah, so aside from that, to sum it up, those were just the main things going inside my head, and I'll finish it off here. See you guys.